What we're really doing is we're making education a total experience. We're introducing the practical, real-world side, realizing that the intellectual side is already covered in the classroom. So we're giving kids an opportunity and a forum to be able to have online, real-life experiences as part of a classroom setting.
Essentially, it's like a field trip, but you don't go to the art museum.
Exactly. The forum that we're talking about, let me deal with the 4-day reality walk that we just did for 8 young high school students in the Detroit area. We took 8 students and we brought them in from all socioeconomic backgrounds and also from different age levels, 12 to 19. The age range plus the fact that the parents' income reflects the totality and difference in terms of their whole total spectrum of life. The family income ranged from $3,000 to $200,000. We took them through a series of 4 days of concentrated reality experiences. We took them into a jail and had them locked up in a jail cell to feel what it was like, to see the deplorable conditions. We had them stand online at a soup kitchen and actually make the soup and feed the soup to the people who were living day to day. We took them on an unemployment line and had them feel what it's like to be unemployed. We took them into a welfare office. They eat beans and rice with a group of welfare mothers. They spent the night in wheelchairs, just feeling what it's like to be disabled. These are experiences that you cannot duplicate in the classroom. We're talking about choices now. We're talking simply about choices. And every one of you has some choices.
Detroit's dialogue program is the brainchild of Jim Tuman, a 39-year-old Vietnam vet who believes that reading, writing, and arithmetic aren't enough skills to make it after high school. Although it's only been around for 2 years, the program has already won praise from the media. Tuman designed dialogue to fill what he sees as a big gap in the educational system.
Sometimes in the classroom, like we're sitting here today, students learn, and it's an intellectual side of education rather than a practical side of education. What we're attempting to do is take some of the intellectual and bring it out into the real world, to teach students and give them an opportunity for them to utilize what they're learning and make it applicable to day-to-day life.
I think so many of the young people are just sort of coasting, as well as their parents. I think a lot of parents are just coasting along, not giving too much thought to what their kids are going to do when they get out of school.
We attempt to take students into very hardcore reality situations, very dramatic reality situations. We have picked specific hardcore unemployment offices where they will see reality of life firsthand.
Most of the kids that come into our program are thinking about, okay, this is great, now what do I do after I get out of high school? And essentially what happens to them during the program is that they realize that there are a lot of options out there, preparing kids for life, not just a degree. I mean, there are a lot of people, you spend 1/3 of your life in your career, 1/3 of your day, every day, going to a job, and if you hate it, that's going to have a great effect on the rest of your life. And I don't think kids realize that. I mean, you spend a lot of hours doing some things that if you hate doing them, you're not going to be a fulfilled person the rest of your life. And we talk about that, and talk about balance in your life.
Okay, Linda just spent the last 5 weeks talking about goals with you, talking about fantasies, talking about your dreams, talking about your dreams. You thinking about your dreams now? Don't lose the dreams. Okay, that's all I'm saying to you. All we're going to deal with now is the how-to. The course is broken down into 3 parts. The initial 5-week program is a goals program. It introduces, it sets the stage for the kids to dream intelligently, to look at where they want to be, to get an opportunity to fantasize. Then the next 14 weeks are a how-to. I spend maybe 2 weeks leading into 14 or 15 speakers who come in and talk about what they do from a reality standpoint.
Go to the universities, talk to the admissions counselor, the finance counselor. Don't sit back. Go after it yourself, because nobody's going to do it for you. I thought they was going to do it for me. They didn't.
But often, simply hearing someone else's story is not enough. This is where the reality walk comes in, taking the students into situations impossible to recreate in a classroom. 1 week, it's eating a meal with welfare mothers, or sitting in a wheelchair for an hour, or maybe a trip to the supermarket with nutritionist Tim Brolis.
Okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to feed a family of 4 on $78. That's the median income, according to the Department of Labor, as to what is spent each week on food.
And so what the dialogue program does is it goes further than just facts. It provides the experiences that hit home and are lasting. In other words, something that you'll never forget. information comes and goes and changes, especially in the field of nutrition. And so what you want to do is create a basic awareness, an awareness that says to this individual, I didn't know that was in there. I didn't know that's the way it was. And now that I do, I have a choice, and I can make that choice.
Are we talking health food or fresh food? What are we talking?
Fresh, healthy food.
Is there anything fanatical about being concerned about what you eat here?
No.
I mean, just because a person has fruits and vegetables, are they a health nut? I'm asking you.
No.
No.
Some of the experiences on the reality walk aren't as pleasant as shopping.
Anything that I say in a classroom is 1/100th as effective as what they see in a jail or a soup kitchen or learn in a supermarket. Because these are experiences that will never, ever leave them. Long after my words have evaporated, these experiences will stand in the rest of their lives.
My advice for these kids is stay in school, and stay away from that drug, and and take life as it comes real slow, Don't be, out there caught up in everything like I was,
When I address a class and I look at these students, they always think that, well, he's really not talking to me. He's talking to Johnny next to me, or he's talking to Sally behind me. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make it. I know that I'm going to make it. And except for one thing, it's a great attitude to feel this way, but there's no tools to be able to make it with. And so they sit there expecting that it's going to come to them. And when it doesn't come to them, all the erosion and the fact that they're going in with very little self-esteem comes to fruition. What happens 3 years, 4 years from now, when you walk through the doors and you're going to walk through the doors and you're going to say, here I am, world. But you're not going to have anything to give the world. What do you think is going to happen then? You're just going to go out and take the first job that comes along? And that's going to be it, right? Mm-hmm. You want that for the rest of your life?
No.
Marty knows that he has got to get X amount of dollars before he graduates. He's going to start to look around for scholarships. He's going to start to look around for available money. Now with what's happening with the banks, with government loans, with secured student loans, it's all drying up. That means by the time you graduate in 4 years, there'll be almost no money left from the banks to give to you to go on to higher education. So you're going to have to look now. Do you understand? Yeah. How do you think getting a job at a station? How are you going to get a job at a station? You're going to walk up and say, same thing she's going to do. You're going to walk up with a sign, I'm an attorney. You're going to walk up with a sign, I'm a disc jockey. How?
What is it? You look in the paper, then you go out through employment services to see if...
I don't think there's one job in the paper for a disc jockey. How much would you like to bet me? You want to bet me $1,000 right now? What about putting down a list of questions? A, B, C, D. Putting down a list of questions and saying, this is what I need to ask you. These are the answers that I need to get before I can make an intelligent choice. It's the same thing with law school. It's the same thing with a TV sound technician or TV cameraman. Yeah. You need the answers.
I've really felt very strongly about the fact that you can't teach somebody about something that you don't know. I mean, if you don't know about how to set goals and how to go about choosing a career, then it's a difficult thing.
Yes,
and I think that if teachers and parents both, which dialogue dealing with the teachers and the parents both, if they know how to do some of these things to encourage children to look for a career, to look at some options, because today there are, I mean, I'm not that old. I've only been out of college about 15 years, but there are 10 times as many options open for students today as there were 15 years ago, and 20 or 30 years ago, even more so. And so I think that a lot of what is happening is that because of all the options, I think students are having a much more difficult time. And so it's a lot, as you said, with your older boys, things worked out very nicely. Mm-hmm. How do you think Tom's going to benefit from it in the future? I mean, do you think he's actually going to take those steps, and does he know?
Well, the thing about it, I think that I am going to see that he takes those steps, you see, because I learned as much from the program as what the kids did.
Anyway, this morning, we have someone who's a federal marshal, and I wanted her to talk to you about some of the things that she feels about what she does for a living, and how she views her life, how it affects her personally, how it affects her family, what she does on an average day, some of the problems that she encounters, some of the frustrations she encounters.
Oh, you know, sorry, it's nothing personal. I just, you know, figured I'd just stay kind of close to you though today. It's a strange feeling, being a female especially. It's kind of strange when you're with the men all the time, and I'm basically with men. All my partners are acted hostile. You know, don't say that to me. I'm a deputy marshal. You know, don't you dare refer to me that way. It won't get you anywhere. You just have to learn how to take it as a grain of salt. And just...
You know, it's not quite like it was probably when I might have been a kid, and even before then, when you actually learn from your parents what the profession or the trade was actually like. We have to kind of tell the kids what it's like. And I think that's the big difference. You know, I could tell a young man maybe what it's like to be a state trooper, but only a state trooper can really tell him what it's really like. And then you have to give him an opportunity probably to walk in that fellow's shoes to really find out what it's like. And many times, I think it's a little bit too expansive for us to really try to cover all the professions or cover all the reality. And so we have to have that kind of assistance from other institutions, from other individuals, to help expose our youngsters to what is out there in the real world.
Following the 14 weeks, when we bring in a full complement of speakers, we try and get a cross-section of a working populace. We work from, say, being a waiter on up to being a neurosurgeon, and we try and get a cross-section. And more important, we try and deal with those occupations that the students really want for themselves. So we try and take a poll at the beginning of the 14-week session. You know, what do you want to be? I want to be a stewardess. I want to be an engineer. And so we bring in these people. But before we bring them in, we talk to them and we say, don't talk about the fact that you're this great success. Because here you're dealing with students who cannot identify with your success pattern. They're dealing with their own baggage. They're dealing with their own problems. And they need to see that you were once at their level too. Okay, dead silence. Look at that clock.
Like a drill sergeant, Jim Tuman is telling his class to think about time in a way they've never thought about it before. It's his way of getting students to think about life after school. He wants to scare them smart.
How would you like to do another 5,400,000 of these as something that you hate? How would you feel? Useless. Useless? Okay.
Jim Tuman is from Detroit. We've asked him to apply his shock tactics to this high school class in Toronto.
How would you feel?
I'd have to do something.
You'd have to do something.
Tuman teaches the students to ask themselves exactly what they want out of life, to set themselves goals now.
A lot of the questions that we're asking now, at some point you're going to ask yourself. And it's important that you ask them now while you have the time to be able to, take the direction and take the bull by the horns so that you can make some decisions as opposed to waiting until it's thrust upon you.
Tuman says it brings reality to the classroom, a reality that includes a trip to an unemployment officer to see what jobs are available. Tuman's class learns that without training, you can't afford to be choosy.
Just plain factory works. Plain factory work and low-paying jobs.
We need sandwiches. Next, they're sent out to buy a week's groceries for a family of 4. They have a budget of $81. Ottawa says that's the borderline figure for a family of 4. Here's where they learn there's more to food than lip service.
I think we went over it.
No.
But shopping as a team is only the beginning. Students must also share a meal where cooperation with your neighbor is essential, or you don't eat.
Yeah, what happens if she said no?
I don't get no milk.
That's right. Remember that. What happens if she said no? What happens if I decided to say no?
Well, I'm gonna say no.
You're gonna say no? Go ahead, you say no. Now watch, I can't get to the milk, right? Okay, so I need you at this moment just for basic food, right? The fact is that they all need each other. This sense of cooperation, that this meal exists even for an hour at a time, gives these young people an opportunity for them to see firsthand that without someone else, they can't function. Each has its own place. Learning nutrition and learning what you eat can prolong life. Learning about the whole area of drug subculture, which exists as such a principal problem in the schools today, and learning all the ramifications and all of what maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, they may be in a position where they're dealing or using.
Reformed drug dealer Ted Wheeling teaches this part of the course and knows from experience how drugs can ruin your life. At 17, he was told to leave home because of his involvement with drugs.
One day, some people came by. They broke in the house while I was there with my mom. They were looking for me because a friend had ripped them off for $2,000, and I knew who they were. And they had broken the door to get in, and at that point, my mother could not handle anymore the things that were happening in my life, and she asked me to leave. I've been beat up and robbed and ripped off for thousands of dollars by some people who I thought were my friends. And when I was in jail looking for bail money, I called some of my friends, but they were not around. They didn't want anything to do with me anymore.
And I think knowing that you always have the choice, but knowing that you have something to compare to, is basically what dialogue is about. And dialogue is only a series of experiences. I mean, we take young people and we tie their legs up and we have them sit in a wheelchair for 4 or 5 hours. We try and have them get into the bathroom just simply because we want them to understand some of the difficulties that somebody is experiencing who is disabled. But we have this part of the course taught by somebody who is legitimately disabled for life, so that there's an exchange, there's a sensitivity. But if this person only shared what their disability was, the student who was listening would get it third hand. Actually getting into the chair gets them closer to the disabled situation. And that's what we're attempting to do. This program is not perfect. It is not a godsend. It just simply tries to have you step into somebody else's shoes for a period of time to understand what that person is about and what that person is experiencing and feeling.
The only feedback that I've really ever gotten is a thankfulness by a number of young people. But I think what they get out of it, very bluntly, is the wheelchair experience. It's not as easy as it looks, and they find that out very soon. They find out that mobility is a problem if you're impaired.
Dialogue is learning by experience. It's actually hands-on education. And it's the ability of students to be able to be put into a real-life situation, to see the dynamics of that real-life situation, and then to kind of take it and personalize it. And this is what all of these experiences are about. Dialogue is only the catalyst. It only brings students, it only sets the stage for students to be able to make their own choices, because the choices are ultimate. The student themselves has to make these choices in their own context, but by putting and having a number of these experiences collectively together, they can see areas, as Ann says, they can see areas where they don't want to be.
Before Marty Bolger started the dialogue program, school was just another place to waste time.
Then Jim Tuman came in, and he started asking me critical questions like, well, what are you going to do after high school? How are you going to do it? And how are you going to pay for what you're going to do? And I had no answers for none of those questions. Now I have answers for practically every question he could bring up.
Well, yes, I think it should be happening to youth, period. You know, and not necessarily just in the high schools. I think the sooner that we start taking youngsters around and letting them see what's out there, the better. Again, one person is kind of limited to his exposure. And I don't want to get religious, you know, but even Jesus Christ only worked with about a dozen people. So he was working with a limited number, but within that number you could start seeing the changes. And we don't know quite where the influence will stop, because as those youngsters talk to other youngsters, then we hopefully it will spread. But we need to try to get that same kind of exposure to a greater number of youngsters. We have to recognize, too, that a youngster can't experience everything, and so the classroom still serves a purpose. But when we can give that kid that additional exposure, we should.
In Japan, high school students' violence, like is becoming a very big social problem. And it reflects that the Japanese high school students are confused about their goals and about their future and things like that. And it's our interest, to find out how other society, like the United States, is solving this problem and how to try to cope with it.
So you have to take a look at what's around you and set some goals for yourself and move in some type of positive direction in your life. Even though there'll be negative setbacks, you have to know that nothing's easy in life that's worthwhile, and that you have to set a goal for yourself to improve yourself. And I think that you have to take a look at where you're at and where you want to go, and I think that's what what life's all about. You got to make these decisions and grow, and that's something you can't really learn in a textbook. You got to go out and do it.
I think the most important thing that I have seen in terms of the students that we have dealt with is they're starting to put more definition into their lives. They're not as vague. It's not pie in the sky. They're not dealing with the fact that, well, I'm going to go out and the world is waiting for me. But there's the how-to. They have some sort of a plan. They're starting to think about a plan. They're starting to think about where they want to be 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And that's important to us. Actually, more important to them.
Isn't part of what you do, too, try to motivate kids to appreciate and to grab all they can while they're in school,
Right,
though? Yeah.
because they've got to see the relevance of what they're doing. I mean, maybe learning how to read and doing arithmetic doesn't mean a lot to somebody, but when they realize that there are a lot of those kinds of things, we found that a lot of kids go back into the classroom and are better students once they realize they have a goal that, taking this social studies class or this calculus class is part of gaining what they want. If they decide they want to be a doctor and they know what it takes and where they've got to go, they also know that while I'm here in high school, I've got to get everything I can out of it because I'm not going to learn anything that I don't want to learn. So they go back into the classroom and they're much better students. The teachers have found that because when you have a goal in life, then you know.
Well, are you going to wind up on that line? Why?
Because I have plans.
Tell me about your plan.
Well, I'm going to go to school first.
Okay.
Howard University.
All right, then.
I'm a graduate.
Okay.
Okay, after I graduate. And yes, let me look at things as they are. I feel very, very much directed. I kind of hate to say this, I love myself, I really do.